At my ex's lavish wedding reception at the historic Riverview Manor, his new bride paused mid-toast to publicly mock my dress and sneer at my inappropriate presence in front of every mutual friend and family member, only for a sharp-eyed waitress to step forward moments later with a bombshell revelation about the groom's secret past that instantly silenced the entire room. I was tucked into a back corner of the ballroom when the bride lifted her champagne flute and declared, "I saved him from that broken woman." The room erupted in laughter, some guests clinking glasses, others nodding as if she'd just delivered the night's best punchline. Heat rushed to my cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from every buried memory surfacing all at once. My stomach twisted, yet I stayed rooted to my seat, no tears, no flinch. Then, through the sparkle and chatter, a waitress glided forward as though wading through water. She stopped beside the head table, silently removed her cap, held it at her side, and met the bride's gaze. "I'm his daughter," she said. "And I have something to say." The laughter died. The bride's face drained of color, her mouth hung open, but no words followed, only that sharp, loaded silence. And in that moment, everything shifted. You ever get that gut punch feeling that says you don't belong? That tightening in your chest urging you to turn around? That was me, parked outside the Ridgewood Grand Hotel, gripping an ivory invitation edged in gold. It had arrived a month earlier, no return address, just my name, Amara Lane, in perfect calligraphy. I almost tossed it. Who sends a wedding invite to the ex-fiancé's former partner? First I thought mistake. Then maybe an odd olive branch. But deep down I knew, it was a proclamation. A warning. Gavin Reed, the man I'd spent 6 years with, was formally erasing me. I hadn't seen him in 3 years. Not since he slipped out in the middle of the night after I lost our baby. He didn't look back, just murmured he couldn't live in sadness, packed a duffel, left a note, and disappeared. He didn't just walk away from me, he walked away from Leia, too, his daughter with another woman, 5 years old when she moved in with us. The moment she took my hand and called me Mom, I wasn't just Gavin's partner. I was hers. And when he left, Leia stayed, by choice, not accident. For months I was a ghost. Waking felt like trudging through wet cement. Silence in our apartment was unbearable. Every photograph, every song, every corner echoed the family we'd almost had. I stopped answering calls, stopped looking in mirrors. But I still packed Leia's lunch. I still braided her hair. I still quizzed her on spelling, forcing my tears behind a steady smile. One night, curled on the bathroom floor, trembling from another debt collector call, Leia knocked softly. 10 years old, barely up to my shoulder. She eased the door open, sat beside me, and held out a peanut butter sandwich. "You forgot to eat," she said. In that quiet act of care, I realized I wasn't alone. If she refused to give up on me, I couldn't give up on myself. It took 2 years of therapy, odd jobs, and self-help marathons just to feel human again. Gradually, I found pieces of myself I'd thought lost. I dove back into design, websites, logos, anything freelance. We moved into a cozier place near Leia's school. I even laughed again, the kind that vibrates in your ribs. Then the invitation resurfaced, abandoned on the kitchen table until Leia picked it up. Her voice was steady as she read it aloud. "You should go," she said. "Not for him, but for you. So he sees what he lost." At 16, she was wiser than any adult I knew. I agreed. Uncle Joe, the man who raised me after my mom died, offered to drive us. He never trusted Gavin. He said Gavin's smile was too practiced, his eyes too distant. He sat beside me in the back row. "You're doing fine," his nod said, even if it felt like hell. When we slipped into the ballroom, I didn't know what to expect. Maybe whispers, awkward stares. What I didn't expect was a setup, pure, gleaming opulence designed to humiliate. Crystal chandeliers dangled like frozen tears. The aisle was edged in imported white orchids. Even the napkins bore monograms. The string quartet played with smug precision. I lingered in the doorway, steadying my breath. Leia vanished into the kitchen, catering staff uniform, swearing it was just to check on me, though I knew better. She was there to protect me, as always. Uncle Joe was already seated, offering a tight-lipped nod. I slid in beside him, hands folded, head down. Then I glimpsed Gavin at the altar, broad shoulders, that rehearsed half-smile, shaking hands, whiskey in one hand. To anyone else, he probably read as warm and magnetic. I saw the distance behind his charm, the shallow eyes he wore the night he left. And there was Serena, gleaming blonde hair, white silk gown, laughter a notch too loud. She leaned into him, each move saying, "Look what I have. Look what she never could." They exchanged vows under a massive floral arch. Gavin's voice never wavered. I kept my chin tucked, pressing my cheek into the inside of my lip, just to feel grounded. Applause rippled through the crowd as they kissed. Serena turned, beaming like a trophy. Then the reception roared to life. Glasses clinking, servers weaving through clusters of gossiping guests. I sipped water, staying present. Leia glided by with a tray of bruschetta, caught my eye, winked. "You okay?" Uncle Joe whispered. I nodded. Then came the toast's best man, maid of honor, a distant cousin, each tale more glowing than the last. I busied myself tuning that out until Serena rose, champagne flute in hand. Her eyes sparkled, but the sharp edge underneath cut deeper than any blade. When I met Gavin, she began, scanning the room before settling on me. He was wounded, hurt by someone too broken to see what she had. My skin prickled as her words slammed into me. "She almost ruined him," Serena laughed, so light it turned my stomach. "But I saved him, I healed him. And today, he's finally where he belongs." Laughter followed genuine laughter. People raised their glasses and the clinking echoed through the hall. Some even offered applause. Uncle Joe muttered something under his breath. I was frozen. Every part of me ached to stand, to speak, to scream. But instead, I just stared at Serena, this woman who hadn't lived the nights I spent holding Gavin's hand while he wept over losing Leia, who didn't know about the early mornings I dedicated to writing cover letters for his job hunt. Who knew nothing of the ultrasound photo tucked in the back of my drawer, never to be framed. She didn't save him. She showed up only after he'd already run. That's when I saw her pause near the kitchen. One of the waitresses had stopped mid-stride, her gaze fixed on Serena, her jaw tight and fists clenched. It was Leia. She stepped forward, shaking but determined, weaving between tables and clinking glasses until she reached the microphone. Shoulders rising and falling with each breath, she removed her server's cap and held it at her side. Then, in a voice louder than I'd ever heard from her, she declared, "I'm his daughter, and I have something to say." The room went silent. Champagne flutes froze midair. Conversations halted mid-sentence. The air felt heavy, charged. Guests turned in their chairs, whispering. Serena's smile flickered, her hand still clasped around her glass. Gavin slowly swiveled in his seat, staring at the girl in the black apron and white blouse who had just exposed every lie his night depended on. Leia stood beside the dance floor, her cap clenched in both hands, her curls tumbling from their bun. Her chest rose and fell like each breath was a victory. "She's not just the woman you're mocking," Leia began, voice trembling at the edges. "She's the woman who raised me." Serena's brow furrowed. "Wait, what?" she stammered. "I'm Gavin's daughter," Leia continued, "from before he met you, from before he ran away, from before he pretended we didn't exist." A few people gasped. I noticed one of Gavin's cousins slowly lowering his phone, uncertain whether to keep filming. Leia took another step forward, unscripted but unwavering. "He left when I was 11, left not only my mom but me too. He didn't call, didn't write, just vanished. And you want to call her broken?" Her eyes flicked to Serena, who now looked unsteady on her feet. "I watched my mom work 2 jobs so I'd have food. I watched her cry alone so I wouldn't hear, and when people asked where my father was, I said he was away on business because I couldn't bear the truth that he chose not to love us." A hush fell as people absorbed her words. Gavin finally spoke, his voice low and cautious. "Leia, not here," she snapped, stepping closer. "Oh, now you remember my name. When I sent you birthday cards, they came back unopened. When I emailed to say I missed you, you never replied. You didn't block me, you ignored me. And now you're letting this woman trash my mom like she's worthless." His face cracked for the first time. I felt neither pity nor triumph, only clarity. I wasn't the one who should feel ashamed. "You didn't break her," Leia's voice grew stronger. "You broke yourself, and then you tried to bury us like we didn't matter." Serena's eyes darted around, searching for support, but finding none. Gavin remained silent, staring at his daughter like she was a stranger in a stranger's clothes. Leia moved toward me, and I rose to meet her halfway. Our fingers intertwined, and in that small gesture, something inside me stirred. Not anger or bitterness, but power. "She didn't come here to fight," Leia said, turning back to the crowd. "She came because I promised her she didn't have to hide anymore." Then she locked eyes with Serena, calm and steady. "You don't need an invitation to belong in a room. And no one gets to rewrite our story to look better." The audience held its breath. Serena's hand trembled around her champagne flute. "This is crazy," she whispered. "She's just trying to ruin my wedding." Leia lifted her chin. "You ruined it the second you built it on lies." Without another word, she turned and pulled me toward the exit. The crowd parted in hushed awe. Behind us, I heard Gavin call Leia, but she didn't look back. Outside, the air was cool and still. Leia exhaled as if she'd been holding her truth inside forever. She looked up at me, tears shining but a triumphant smile on her lips. "I wasn't going to let her humiliate you," she said. I whispered, "You didn't have to do that." "I did," she replied. "You saved me." It was time I returned the favor. In that moment, I knew some of the strongest love stories aren't romantic. They're forged in silent devotion, in survival, in the choice to protect someone who's always protected you. We hadn't walked halfway down the hall when Serena's voice cut through the quiet. She followed us outside, her perfect facade in tatters, smudged mascara, trembling hands. Leia stopped and waited. I stayed close. Serena's words came fast and panicked. "You can't just do that. You can't hijack my wedding and humiliate us. Leia's brow rose. I didn't say anything untrue. Serena's gaze flicked between us. I didn't know he had a daughter. Did you ask?" Leia interrupted. "Or did you just believe the version that made you feel superior?" Serena opened her mouth, but no sound came. Then Gavin stepped out, his jacket unbuttoned, tie askew, looking exposed. "Leia," he said softly, "I never meant for any of this to happen." She turned to him slowly. "Which part? Me being born, you abandoning me, or letting someone else raise me while you vanished?" His shoulders slumped. "I thought I was protecting you," he mumbled. "You thought disappearing was protection?" I echoed. "Yes," he whispered. "But you can't take it back." "No," I said. Once more, Leia's voice broke the silence. "I used to tell myself you were dead because the truth, that you were alive and just didn't care, was worse." Gavin's lips parted, then closed. He looked down at his feet and the trail of choices he couldn't erase. Then, gently, Leia stepped forward. She didn't cry out or run away. She looked him in the eye and said, "I forgive you." He looked up, startled. "Not for you," she said. "For me, carrying your absence has been exhausting. I'm done." He swallowed hard and nodded once, eyes glossy. "You're incredible. You know that," she added, soft and sad. "I know," she pointed at me. That simple gesture spoke louder than any mic drop, the raw truth laid bare. No glitter, no wine, no forced smiles, just a daughter choosing her mother in front of the man who had abandoned them both. Serena stepped back, arms folded. "So what now? You just walk away and pretend you didn't ruin the night." Leia tilted her head. "You ruined it the moment you built it on lies." And I couldn't help but add, if you wanted a perfect story, you should have chosen someone with nothing to hide. We walked past them into the night. The sky stretched wide and deep above us, clouds drawn out like pulled cotton. It had started to drizzle, but none of us cared. The storm we'd just weathered couldn't be measured in weather. Uncle Joe was waiting by the car. He glanced at us, then at Gavin, still frozen in the entryway, and gave a slow nod. Now that was a mic drop moment. Leia laughed, and I joined in. It wasn't bitter or forced, it was real. In that instant, I felt weightless. Not because anything was fixed, or because Gavin finally understood what he'd lost, but because I knew who I was, and Leia knew who she was, and now, so did everyone else. The next morning, the buzz began, not in tabloids, but the way these things spread now. Silent clips on TikTok, grainy wedding footage leaked anonymously, short videos titled, "Waitress puts bride in her place with epic speech." I didn't watch them. I'd already lived it. Messages poured in, friends I hadn't heard from in years. Some apologized for vanishing when everything fell apart. Others simply said, "You were so brave." Funny thing is, I didn't feel brave. Not in the spotlight, not when Serena mocked me, and not even when Leia stood up and spoke her truth. I felt like someone who had finally stopped trying to disappear. Gavin never reached out. No phone call, no apology, no last-ditch effort to explain himself. His story was written in the silence that followed his exit, and we were done reading it. Serena's name floated in gossip circles for a week or two, proof she'd become the punchline of her own party. I heard she left the reception early and skipped the honeymoon send-off, and apparently moved out within the month. Whether they stayed together or split, I didn't care, because this story was never really about them. It was about us, me and Leia, and who we became when the people who were supposed to protect us walked away. Something shifted in our home after that night. It was quiet, but powerful. Leia changed. She stood taller and stopped apologizing for taking up space. I caught her rehearsing her speech in the mirror one night, not out of vanity, but preparation. She told me she wanted to start a podcast for girls who feel they have no voice. Me? I started something, too. I'd always been afraid to speak publicly about what happened. There's a stigma in being left behind. But after the wedding, I realized I wasn't weak because I broke. I was strong because I rebuilt. So I started writing first notes, then essays. One went to a parenting blog and got published. The comments poured in from mothers, daughters, women I'd never met, all saying, "Thank you for saying what I couldn't say out loud." That grew into a blog, then a community group. A few months later, I registered a nonprofit, The Second Thread, a space for women healing from abandonment, divorce, and emotional abuse. We host circles, offer counseling, and help women write their stories, both literally and figuratively. I never expected it to become what it did. I just wanted to give women a place where silence wasn't the only option. But the most powerful moment wasn't the public closure. It was a quiet evening in our kitchen in January. I was washing dishes when Leia sat at the counter, flipping through her notebook, legs swinging off the stool. She looked up and said, I used to wish my real mom had stayed. My hands froze in the sink. Then she smiled and added, but now I think maybe she left so I'd end up with you. I couldn't speak. I turned, dried my hands, and pulled her into the tightest hug, so tight I could feel her breath. Sometimes life tears pages out of your story mid-chapter and leaves you guessing the ending. But when you fight, when you love fiercely, when you stay, you get something better. You get to write a new story. And the best part? You don't need anyone's permission to start. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own strength or of someone who stood by you when others walked away, please take a moment. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear that broken doesn't mean worthless. That walking away doesn't make you strong, staying and healing does. In the weeks that followed, things didn't go back to normal. They became something better. I found myself waking up without the tight weight in my chest that had lived there for years. It didn't disappear overnight, but it loosened. It gave me space to breathe again, to exist without tiptoeing around someone else's moods or needs. Our little home turned into something of a sanctuary. People started reaching out, not just to me, but to Leia. Girls from her school, a few even from that wedding, saying they'd seen the clip, that she inspired them. One message said, "You made me feel like I could finally say what happened to me." And that's when it really hit me. Our story, our pain, it wasn't just ours anymore. It was a mirror for so many people who'd been through something similar, who thought they were alone in it. That's what stories do. That's why they matter. They don't fix the past, but they help light the way forward. One night, about a month later, I found a small envelope on my pillow. No stamp, no return address. Just my name written in small, careful handwriting. Inside was a letter from Gavin's mom. I hadn't seen or heard from her in over 2 years. She apologized not for Gavin, but for her silence. She said she watched the wedding video online, cried the whole way through, and realized how much damage had been done by looking the other way. She didn't ask for forgiveness, just understanding. She ended the letter with a line I'll never forget. "You didn't lose a son, you made space for your daughter to rise." I didn't know what to feel. I didn't respond. But I kept the letter. Not because I needed her words, but because sometimes we forget that healing can ripple outward. That truth, once spoken, has a way of shaking loose things we thought were set in stone. The nonprofit kept growing. We got a small grant. Local papers started to pick up the story. I even did a podcast interview nervous as hell, but I showed up. And when the host asked me, "What would you say to the person who hurt you the most if they were listening right now?" I took a breath and said, "Nothing." Because I'm not speaking for them anymore. I'm speaking for everyone who survived. That episode went viral. But even with all of that, the best parts were still the small ones. Leia coming home from school with paint on her jeans because she'd stayed after to help a friend decorate for an art show. Us dancing in the kitchen to cheesy old music while cooking dinner. Nights when we didn't talk about the past at all, just laughed about dumb memes or made popcorn and watched movies we'd already seen 100 times. The biggest shift, though? It came the day Leia got an email saying her podcast had been accepted into a youth media program. She ran into my room, breathless, and held her phone out with both hands. "Look, they said yes." I pulled her into a hug, and we cried, both of us. Because this wasn't just a win, it was a beginning. And me? I kept writing. The blog grew into a book deal. I still don't really believe it. A real publisher with real editors and a release date for the following spring. The book is called The Second Thread, just like the nonprofit. Because that's what this all was, a second chance, a second bond, a second beginning. Stronger, more intentional. Chosen. One night, months later, I got a call from the venue where Serena's wedding was held. The coordinator remembered me. She said another bride had asked if the woman from the viral clip could come speak at her bridal shower. I laughed out loud, like a real, deep laugh. I politely declined, but when I hung up, I couldn't stop smiling. What a wild thing, to go from being an afterthought to someone people wanted in the room. Leia said once that maybe the best revenge isn't anger, it's joy, it's peace. It's building something beautiful in the rubble someone else left behind. And I think she's right. So, if you're watching this right now and you're still in the middle of it, still holding it all together, still waiting for your moment, I want you to know something. It's coming. Maybe not with a grand speech or viral moment. Maybe not in a crowd of people. Maybe it's just you, quietly getting back up. Quietly choosing yourself. That's brave, too. That counts. We didn't get the fairy tale. But we got something better. The truth. The real kind. And with it, the chance to write a future no one gets to take from us. So yeah, maybe this all started with a wedding. But it ended with a home. With laughter. With a girl who found her voice and a woman who remembered hers. And if even one person out there hears this and decides to start over, to speak, to stay, to love themselves fiercely, I'll know it was all worth it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that they're not alone, that they're stronger than they think, and that the ending isn't written yet. You're still holding the pen.